そもそも新しい出会いがないんだね。
Disneyland and college campuses in America have one thing in common, and it's that a lot of Americans' best memories tend to be in these locations. Welcome to the Lazy Fluency podcast, where we have casual conversations switching between English and Japanese so that you can learn from and with us along the way. I'm Joey.
And I'm Miami.
And the topic of the day is third places. But before we get into that, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and drop a review on whatever platform you're listening on. We appreciate the support. And with that out of the way, third places. Loneliness is an ever-increasing problem around the world, and the decrease of third places in particular is partially responsible for that. A third place is a place that is nearby, that isn't the place you live, and that isn't the place that you work. I was inspired from a video by Not Just Bikes called The Great Places Race by Suburbia, The Third Place. Aimi, have you ever heard of this concept of the third place before?
聞いたことはないけど、なんていうの言葉自体は聞いたことないけど、だいたい想像はできる。
Yeah, and another reason I made this video is not only because I saw this video this week, but I also had an experience where, so I've lived where I live for, on and off in different locations, but probably 15 years at this point. And we have a thing that happens every year, a musical fest that happens every year. And everybody in the city is aware of it. But I, somebody who's lived here for 15 years, this is the first year I've ever gone. The very first year I've ever gone. And I was talking to other college students, because I went with some college students. And I was just pondering why that was. It's not even that far. The town I live in is pretty small. I could bike there, whatever. Compared to America, it's a very reasonable distance away. It's free to attend. And I was basically why have I never done that? And when I was in Japan, for example, I think in terms of the perimeter around where I was staying, I probably hit up everything in, I don't know, at least half a mile perimeter. And I basically got around to thinking, and after watching this video, that it's because, two things. One, by the titles, it says Great Places Erased by Suburbia. So I definitely think there's a connection between the whole people living in their own houses and they have to drive everywhere that makes them feel like they don't know the location they live around. And then I also feel like there's another thing where these third places are kind of disappearing. So aside from just to give you a more clear description, things that are places that would be third places would be libraries, churches, bathhouses, community centers. This is mentioned in the video, French cafes, and for me personally, LGSs, local game stores. You are a frequent attender of third places, right? Although you attend them for study.
カフェとか、ライブラリー、たまに行くかな。で、あとは
Restaurants as well.
そうだね、レストランと、バースハウスって何？バースハウスって。あれか、銭湯か。
Yeah, exactly.
銭湯だ。はいはい。温泉ね、温泉。温泉もたまに行くかな。コミュニティセンターはよくわからないね。多分。
It's generalized, but it depends on the group.
なるほど。
But it depends on the community.
そうね。そんぐらい私は。
Yeah, but I think in the US, I think it's also common for cafes or bars you don't go to, but that's very popular in Japan. And obviously there's something I want to touch on in Japan because I feel like it's very interesting. Because I feel like America has half of the problem, and I feel like Japan has half of another problem. In short, I feel like Japan has all the architecture for third places, but culture kind of prevents, in my opinion, a lot of the benefits of third places.
そうなんだよ。そう。
And then in America, I feel like our infrastructure sucks, and that hurts really bad. But we have the culture to actually enjoy third place if it does exist. And so as to some of those benefits, for one, I definitely recommend checking out this video, but the general idea is, and why it's defined as somewhere near your house. There's some other caveats, like it should also be relatively cheap or inexpensive, like I said, near your house, and somewhere where people, and because if you have those two things, you will tend to get a population set that is diverse that you normally wouldn't come across, and that generally is spontaneous. So you'll obviously have locals, but basically if you go to this location, you will be encounter new people, you'll encounter new opportunities to create weak friendship ties, maybe longer friendships, and generally a stronger sense of community. And there's a bunch of benefits, but generally speaking, those are some of them. And I mean, have you ever felt, because you saw the video a second ago, have you ever felt that you've had a third place in the way that the video talks about it? Because I mentioned that you technically go to places that might be defined as third place, but what is your perspective before I talk about what is the cultural aspect that that it seems like you agreed that Japan might be missing with the third place?
そうね。なんかもうそもそもさ、例えばまあカフェとか、まあ図書館とか温泉とかもちろんあるし、ここの third places にthird place かに値するものはみんなここにあるんだけども、そこに行くときに目的としては知らない人に会うためなんじゃなくって、そのすでに知ってる人となんて言うんだろう、まあハングアウト、遊ぶとか話すために行くから、そもそも新しい出会いがないんだね。そうなんかここのそのさっきのビデオではその新しい人と交流したり、まあその近所の人たちと仲良くするために行くもんだって言ってたんだけど、ここではちょっと違う気がする。ここって日本のことね。で、まあさっきも言ってたけど、もしアメリカの人たちが日本に来たらもうすごいもうパラダイスだと思うよ。ね、近いし物は揃ってるし。でも日本人はなんだろうね、他の人に話しかけないね。から、そういう、なんていうんだろう、性格っていうか気質もあるから、ちょっと、そのthird place の意味がちょっとなくなってる気がする。ね。だってもしさ、その友達とか知ってる人とハングアウトするだけだったらさ、家でいいじゃん。ね。自分の家に呼べばいいんだけど、日本人は家に呼ぶことがあんまりないんだよね。そのする人はまあもちろんいるんだけど、あんまりなんて言うんだろう、よくやらない。その毎日家で遊ぼうぜとかじゃなくて、どっかに出かけたり、そのカフェとか行く感じだから、そうだね、そんな感じ。
Yeah, that's the exact observation I had. Basically, I saw kind of Americans treat their house the same way Japanese people treat other like outside of their house establishments, like restaurant, bar, karaoke, cafes, and some of these are listed. And I guess we came across because I don't know. I'm assuming you haven't looked at like what I wrote in some of this document here, but I find it very interesting. Cafes in America, karaoke in America is a thing that everyone does in one big room. And I actually went to one for the first time in America, like a karaoke bar at night. I'm not really that kind of a guy, but I went. And yeah, everybody there is like kind of shit-faced and just singing, as in very drunk, and just singing their heart out. And everybody's vibing. And on the other hand, I know they do have some of those in Japan, like the big open ones, but the majority that people go to are a closed room. Like you don't actually... Yeah, and a lot of people go by themselves. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's a large percentage that actually go by, especially nowadays, go by themselves. Cafes, obviously there are cafes that people go to study for, but I don't think you're going to be chatting and hanging out with other people. And on top of that, a lot of cafes now, like manga cafes, are again, you have your private room, the koshitsu, and you literally like the door is locked and they're sound insulated. So it's like you have a close location that people could theoretically travel to, but you don't have this culture of talking to people. And I feel like this is getting even worse now because, so in my head, like I like to invite people to my house. I like to go to their house, but that's a monetary reason. And so for America, it's like I don't mind going out to somewhere. Like I said, like LGS's, local game stores, or somewhere I realized were my third place before I really knew the term. I'll commonly, and I kind of lost my third place where I live because of many reasons. They went out of business, not due to financial reasons, but the owner had like personal life issues that came up. But I would just go there just to go there with no intentional plans. And I just talked to the owner, other people coming in. And a lot of friends that I've made are just through literally standing inside a local game store, sitting down at a table. And even now, a place that I do go to is just a hobby shop, and they don't even have play space. But I'm really good friends with for one, I really like the game store vibe, and two, I'm good friends with the owner. And so I'll literally just walk up with no intention of, I mean, so I buy stuff obviously, but like, it doesn't really matter, and just chat up for like straight up 2 hours. And I made a lot of friends like that. Even in Japan, the only reason we got to shoot the board game video is because I just ended up talking. I couldn't help it. I was like, I'm in a board game shop. I want to talk to this dude here. He seems like I could talk to him. And then I started a conversation, and then that's what led to us ending up being able to film the video for Jelly Jelly Cafe.
質問だけどさ、まあ、例えば、まあ、ジョイは、ボードゲームボードゲームじゃない、ホビーショップが好きで、まあ、そこに行くじゃん。で、まあ、お客さんとかね、店長と話すんだけどさ、まあ、店長と話すのはさ、どういう、なんていうのゲームがおすすめとか、なんか最近面白いゲームあるみたいな、そういう話はするじゃん。でもさ、お客さんにさ、何を話すの？
Do you mean I'm talking to other customers there?
そうそうそう。
Oh, that's even easier. I mean, I know the owner pretty well now, so like and many game store owners actually. So it's not just about game recommendations. They'll literally talk about like I'll be like, how's life, and they'll talk about, I don't know, like I'm not gonna. I mean, I haven't said the person's name, but like they'll talk about how their like wife situation's going, or whatever, their kids, or what like shipments of games they have coming in, or like I'm interested in the future at some point running like a game store, and so they'll give me advice or answer my questions. But for other customers, it's super easy. You just identify something that they're interested in that you're also interested in. And most of the time, especially in America, people are talkative. So somebody will say something, and then you just respond to that comment, and then you just have a conversation. Like currently my people, like some people I have in like my Magic Play group, are people I literally just met in line at the game store, and I made they made a comment, and then I responded to it, and then we just got along really well. One of them, I mean, I don't know if they live here anymore because they were the college student, but like I went from being online at a local game store to playing Smash Bros. It was like called Smash Minus. It was you don't have to know what that is, but it's like a modded version of Smash Bros. For the Wii. And we just went from the game store to his house, and that was the first time I've ever met him. So I definitely feel
なんかね、結構もうなんか突っ込むとこがいろいろあるんだけどさ、私さ、一回しか会ってないじゃん、その人に。
Yeah.
で、そっから家にもう招くっていうのがもう日本ではまずありえなくて、で、例えば日本だとさ、まあ、なんだ、じゃあ、例とすると、まあ本屋さん行くじゃん。で、本屋さんで、誰かがまあ漫画を立ち読みしてると。で、じゃあ漫画興味あるんだってわかるじゃん、その人が。だけどそこで話しかけると、もうとんでもなくうざがられるっていうか、何この変人みたいな。変な人ってなるから。
One of the problems with Japan in terms of this is, here's how it works in America. People are kind of on average more talkative. So somebody will say something. It'll be like, wow, this thing is higher than, like, more expensive than I thought, or oh, I have this, like, this will go great in my commander deck. And the second somebody says anything, if you are also interested in it, there's an opportunity to say something, start a conversation. Problem in Japan is people are dead silent. So you're like talking to a brick wall. And I was actually watching an anime that's airing this season. I cannot remember the name, but it had an interaction between a more, I would say, like, it's like the popular it's called it's like Skip Torofa. It's Skip and Loafer is the name. Okay. And there was an interaction between a more, I guess you could say, reclusive or more introverted girl, and then somebody who's more like outgoing, whatever. And then the outgoing person tries to talk to the other person, or tries to get them to conversate, have any sort of conversation, and the more introverted person literally just completely stonewalls her. And then in her head, you hear the dialogue, and it's basically like, you're like way too extroverted. You know we wouldn't get along, so I can't say anything. And then eventually she has to text the other person to be like, hey, I'm sorry what I did. But they're like right in front of each other. So instead of speaking, she texts the person who's in front of her. And I thought this was the most Japanese interaction I've seen, even in an anime where I saw actually 2 separate animes in the same day. I was surprised. This whole, instead of responding to somebody face to face, they're embarrassed, so they text instead of responding to the person in front of them. And obviously, I don't think I've ever, or there's probably possibility I've experienced that in Japan in real life. But my only point is, conversation can definitely be hard to strike up. And like, it's not like I went through the book off video and how I tried to talk to the workers there, so I'm very talkative. But I did see that for Jelly Jelly Cafe, I was like, this dude looks chill. He looks like he'd be down to talk. And I also was like, bro, if you're running a board game cafe, we can mesh well.
なるほどね。じゃあなんか、もう一個質問あんだけどさ、例えばじゃあ、アメリカでその列に並んでて、面白そうだなと思って声かけるじゃん。で話があったと。はい。でその後にさ、もう一回会いたいなと思ったら、やっぱりなんだ、電話番号聞くじゃん。What's your number? っつって。今 number じゃないかも、なんか。
Well, yeah, America's always number. Well, it's like your phone number. Some people say your Insta, whatever, but America is very reliant on the standard cell phone number.
そうね。じゃあそういう交換するじゃん、その連絡先を。でさ、多分それをね、日本でやるとね、なんかなんて言うんだろうね。変質者だし、あと例えば男の人が女の人とかにやると、なんかこの人ナンパしてるんじゃないかって思われるんだよ。
Yeah.
そう。だからまずそこでありえないね。そう。
I mean, not saying that women don't engage in the hobbies I engage in. I know they do. But I definitely they do not attend the locations I go to in enough frequency and are, I don't know, for me to encounter women, I guess, to have this problem. There are probably some exceptions I can think of. I've definitely made some conversation with women at like the places I go to, but the vast majority, it's just self-selection. Like the types of people, like actually the things I'm into, it's not really people like me, not to be a pick me or whatever guy or whatever that is, but I've always been in this weird intersection of very sportsy, like I'm not middle, I'm very sportsy and also very nerdy. Normally you have very nerdy who doesn't like the sportsy dude, and then you have very sportsy dude who's like, magic, that's for nerds, and then slaps your
nerdiest
books out of your hand. Yeah. Which, I mean, fundamentally what that's meant is my friend groups have never been a big overlap. I kind of have like 3-4 different friend groups, and it's not that they don't like each other. It's like they're just so not in the same circle that it doesn't make any sense, which is a bummer for me. I have like I don't really have any anime friends, but I have like my Magic friends, and then like I like Nintendo games friends, and then my more sociable friends who would like to go out and do stuff, and then the people who like doing more outdoor stuff and like biking, and they're all like in different places around the world now, so that's a bummer.
待って。例えばさ、じゃあアウトドアが好きってなるじゃん。なんかゲームが好きとかだったらさ、そのゲームショップとかに行って人に会うけどさ、アウトドアのアクティビティが好きで、そういう同じ趣味を持ってる人たちと友達になりたいってなった時ってさ、どうやって友達を作るんだ？例えば走ってて、前に人が見つけたから、前走ってる人に声かけてみるとかってこと？
I've had experiences when I've been hiking that I've met people on the trail that I got along with. And this is actually, we haven't, I don't want to spoil anything, but in a place oops. Well, eventually, I don't know. We'll see if I end up making this hypothetical video that I have spoiled. But
hypothetical.
I will say a place that I really like hiking in America. It has this natural hot spring, and I met some dudes who were also obviously on the hike, and we like stayed the night over there. So we were like in this natural hot spring in the middle of nowhere. Like it's a 2-hour hike to get there. Just us and these 2-3 other dudes who we just met there. One of them and their wife. And yeah, we were just talking for like 2-3 hours. It was really nice. And
いいね、いい
yeah.
ね。なるほどね。そうやって人と会うんだね。もう、例えば日本でハイキング行きますと。で、まあ、たまに、この前私友達とハイキング行ったんだけど、まあ、頂上とかに着くとさ、やっぱ人がいるじゃん。で、なんかおじさんおばさんはね、声かけてくれるんだよ。なんだ。まあ、確か私たち言われたのが、なんか、若いね、みたいな。で、どれぐらい時間かかったのここまで来んなに、みたいな。で、まあ、若いからやっぱり、汗もかかないね、みたいな感じでね。なんかそう、ちょっとしたそういうのは、おしゃべり好きなおじちゃんおばちゃんはしてくるけど、もう若い人とかってもうないね。で、
Yeah,
そうね、もうなんかもう個々のアクティビティをなんかやってるって感じだから、そんな感じやな。
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing about older people in Japan, where I do think all what I said does not actually apply to old people in Japan, which is a large chunk. The problem is you're not gonna have many hobby overlaps, realistically speaking, with old people in Japan. And it's kind of, you know what I'm saying? Hey, like going to a park and seeing some old people, like, hey, let's chat, whatever, that's fine. But your close group of friends is not really ever going to be like 50 years older than you. That's kind of weird. But what I will say is I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, because it obviously might be that Japanese people are older and they don't care anymore. They don't care about maintaining social appearances or whatever. But I also think that a lot of people in their 60s, 70s, 80s just grew up in a very different Japan, and one that was closer, like tighter knit together. And so when I've been to rural restaurants or just walking around in like more rural places in Japan, people are way friendlier, and they'll like, even me, the foreigner with brown skin, I've been like hit up for conversation. The problem obviously is that the problem is that though, it's just like we just don't have, other than being a kind human and a human who's trying to be kind, we don't have much to relate to. And it's like kind of hard for me. It's not like I'm going to be like, hey, I'm playing Magic the Gathering, and then have to be like, hey, you want to join? Or what, did you see the newest anime or whatever? Want to join? Or whatever. It's just like that, making friends in your age range is very difficult. I will, and I think I've hinted.
で終わるじゃん。
Yeah, I think I've hinted
そもそもだってさ、
at this
会った
before.
時に聞くのもなんかおかしいってなっちゃうんだよ。
But what are we asking?
例えばだからアニメ最近の見たみたいな、ずっと友達じゃないけど今作った友達で作ったっていうかもう話しかけた時に最近のアニメ見たみたいな。なんかちょっと、ね、
I mean, normally, like if I'm ever asking that question, it's for a reason. So they would have hinted at something, like you know what bums me out? I think you know this. So I love Book Off. We all know this. I'll keep advertising Book Off. And when I'm at Book Off, my like inner child, or I don't even know, my current child, because it's always, every time I go to Book Off, is like, it's at 100%. And so at everything I'm looking at, I'm like, wow, look at that, look at this. And everybody else just dead silent.
あれですよ、だからブックオフに行ってる人はブックオフが好きで行ってるんだろうけど、別になんて言うんだろうね、立ち読みで静かに読みたいんだろうからね。なんかブックオフの愛を語るのにはちょっとね、温度が違う気がする。
yeah, I don't know. Book off to me, it's funny. Japanese people on average, I would think that they just see book off as a bookstore, if they've even been there. But to me, it's like a wonderland. It's like Disneyland. Book off to me is Disneyland.
You don't even like
Actually,
Disneyland, don't you?
well, it's my version of Disneyland. Which actually, that's a good question. Is Disneyland the same vibe? Like, are people... Because I know Japanese people love Disneyland. I mean, you like
それが
Disneyland.
ね、
I've never met a Japanese person who's not like Disneyland. Are
Yeah.
people more talkative at Disneyland?
Good point, good point ね。私最近、お姉ちゃんと、ディズニーシーに行ってまいりましたと。2週間、いつだっけ ?2 週間前ぐらいかな。で、不思議なことにね、ディズニーランド、ディズニーシーに行くと、みんなね、すごいね、エクストロバートになるんですよ。例えば、まあ、乗り物で並んでますと。ね、列に並んでて、で、前の方の人って今もう乗ってるのね、乗り物が出発するとか、降りてきたとかでね。で、出発するときに、並んでる人は、こうやって手振るのね。いってらっしゃい、みたいな。で、キャストさんも手振るんだけど、普通のさ、シチュエーションではさ、こんなことしたらマジで不審者じゃん。ね、普通に、
Yeah.
例えば、電車乗ってる人にさ、ホームで待ってる時にこうやって手振ったらマジでおかしい人じゃん。だけど、ディズニーランドで、トロッコとか、トロッコっていうのかな。そういうの乗ってて、そうやって手振るとみんな振り返してくれたり、自分で手振ったりとかするから。で、あと、お土産とか買う時も、カチューシャとかね、これ可愛いですねとかね、いろいろあるから、多分あそこはね、ディズニーランドはね、日本じゃなくてアメリカですね。うん。あれはアメリカ。
Oh, to me, Disney, I don't distinguish between world and land. Disney amusement parks. It's
でね、夢の
the
国です。
Disneyland, and this is something that's mentioned in, I think, an interview that I was watching today, or a podcast between Not Just Bikes and a person who wrote a book called Strong Towns. But Disneyland and college campuses in America have one thing in common, and it's that a lot of Americans' best memories tend to be in these locations. They'll say, oh, like my years in college were great, or this trip, like Disney, I love Disneyland. I always want to go to Disneyland, but if only it was my dream to go to Disneyland with all my best friends. And something that I agree with, that was pointed out in the interview I was listening to, is that one of the reasons, or things that people point to, even you pointed to a second ago with the trams, the toroko, right?
Toroko.
Yeah, is that you basically have a high density place where everybody's walking. You have a place, or it's kind of a third place in itself, where people of all kinds are coming in to enjoy something together. You could think of a giant bar or whatever you want, where you have quick access. And obviously Japan has great public infrastructure, but in America, it doesn't. So on top of that, you get the trams, you get the very walkable locations that are car free. And all this also applies to college, where you're constantly in locations where you meet people from different backgrounds, especially if you go to like a liberal arts school, which is like basically like half. It's a very big gap of the types of people you get. And you have the high density, they're very walkable, and you have a bunch of different communities inside there for whatever you like. And so to me, it's like, oh yeah, that's one of the reasons I think so many people come out liking college a lot, is because the average American is not getting that experience. They're getting I mean, like an event that happened this week was that you probably haven't heard about, and I'm not going to go too much into, but one of the examples of a friendly neighborhood in America could be like what happened in, I think it was Missouri, where a black kid was simply trying to pick up his siblings from a house, and he got the address wrong. And before even, at least from my understand, is just upon ringing the doorbell, the owner shot him in the face because the owner thought that he was trying to like break into the house, but he hadn't even done anything but ring the doorbell. The person lived.
待って、盗むんだったらピンポンしないじゃん。
Exactly. People, it's crazy. I mean, there's a racism there. There's a lot of stuff in there, but I'm just saying, people's neighborhoods are not, generally speaking, inviting or close or anything like that in America. So, yeah, this was just a topic that I felt inspired to talk about, and hopefully other people can, or maybe reflect on, do you have a third place in your life that you go to somewhere where you're like, if this place wasn't in my local town, it would drastically reduce the quality of my, let's say, like average week. Because for me, I didn't really think about it like that. But if I didn't have like my hobby shop that I go to, it'd be a really big bummer. And I feel like a lot of people might not think about how they rely on third places as much, or if you don't have one, maybe you consider one of the above options, like I said, and seeing if you can find, at least trying it, going out to one and seeing how it benefits you or not.
Hey,
戻りました。
we're back. Yes. So, I'm gonna talk first. So, like, I've been having this, how do you say, worry, or like things I have trouble with.
悩み事。
Yeah. So, like, I found out, like, so many people, people around me, don't invite me to, like, things they do. And to solve that problem, I thought I should be the person who invite people. But I don't know how. Like, I like outdoor stuff, but people around me are not into outdoor stuff. So, like, yeah. So, what do I do? Do you have any advice for that?
最初のセクションに関わるけど、つまり、私の意見は誘われたい人になりたかったら、まず他の人を誘うしかないって感じ。少なくとも日本だと。でも日本の場合だと、人を誘ったからといって誘われるわけない。つまり99.999 なんていう、そういうパーセントの場合だと、永遠に誘われない。私の経験からすると、友人、日本の友人でも私はいつも誘ってる。いつもメッセージの会話を始めてる。他の、日本にいた時も、ボードゲームとか、ビデオゲームに関することをやりたかった時に、いつも私からやらなくちゃいけなかった。でも、もちろん、私は他の人を誘ってるということは、他の人は誘われてるってことになるでしょ。でも、他の、なんていう、私以外の人は誘われてるから、その人に聞いた方がいいから。
I mean, like, the things I like, people are not interested in, like, especially, like, let's say, like, I wanna hang out with girls, but girls tend not to like outdoor stuff. Like, I like hiking, but they're not, like, into hiking, and also I like running, but, like, no one runs here.
こういう話一回したことはあると思うんだけど、女性として何が普通の趣味としては、
I don't know, just
他の友達とどこかに行く？
shopping and go to a cafe, and then they talk they gossip.
Gossip.
Yeah, and do I don't know, expensive sports like golfing.
ゴルフ？それを
yeah, it's a little like popular.
本当に流行ってる？
I mean, like in my university. Yeah. That's some
もちろんそういうようなお金持ちの人だから。そう。
Yeah. And also I'm afraid that people, like I said, people are not interested in what I like. So obviously I like English, but the thing is, like, some people are really good at English, but some people are not. So I think I don't want to force them, like, to do the same level as mine, like, for English. So that can be a trouble, right? And yeah, so that's the thing I'm currently struggling with.
私もまだどうやって誘われる、日本人から誘われるその問題解決したことないから、 頑張ってみる
Maybe,
しかない。
yeah, I should live in Disneyland. It's a completely different world.
まあ、
it's not Japan.
私だったら、まあ一番の問題は多分東京に住んでないこと。
Yeah, that's right.
東京にたくさんの私と同じような趣味を持ってる人がいるはず。
Yeah. But the thing is, Tokyo, they don't have nature. I mean, like,
まあ一応、何でしたっけ新宿御苑
Yeah, it's,
と、
you still have to pay to get in the park.
他のあったでしょ
代々木公園 Yeah, 代々木公園 is free.
そう、代々木公園は無料だったけど、その時でも、まあ、その、なんていうか、他のグループだけだったでしょそのなんか、居酒屋と同じように、自分の、なんかこの特定なグループだけが、なんか、それだけの関係だった。で、それ以外の人がそのグループと関わらないこと。
They don't have like a free, how do you say, activity? Like, oh, anyone can join or something like that. So, yeah.
で、話しかけられるけど、それは、何でしたっけ不審者と思われる可能性が高いから、一応。
How do you say 不審者? Like,
suspicious person.
Suspicious person. 不審者を見かけたら110番をしないといけないんです。
そうそうそう。それもネタバレになる。
We might make a video about that.
ネタバレそれで、もうそれはそれでいい。ネタバレしたくないから。
Okay.
でも、他のちょっと言いたかったことは、その、スズメを見た、その、何でしたっけ
すずめの戸締まり。
そうそうそう。でも、英語の名前はスズメだけだった。
スズメ
そう、スズメ。多分、なんか、戸締まりという言葉、まあ、日本語でも変だと思う。
戸締まり。戸締まりを、the way we use it is 戸締まりしっかりしたとか、like, did you lock the door? 戸締まりしたみたいな。そんな感じかな。
でも、英語だと、そうそう、did you, like, なんていうか、名詞化されてない。Did you lock the door? Not, did you do the door locking?
Did you do the door locking は You don't say that?
No. でも、なんで、スズメの戸締まりを英語に翻訳しなくちゃいけなかったら、what is it called? Technically, it's the 主人公の名前はスズメだけど、私が最初に見たのはなんか、何でしたっけスズメは鳥でしょ鳥の種類。
鳥だね。in English だと。
Sparrow? No,
Sparrow は違う。ツバメなの。ツバメ。皆さん覚えてください。ツバメでさえ。スズメがね、S から始まる。スパローだ。あれスパロー。あれスパローだ。
同じこと言ってなかった。
スパロースワローが。スワローがツバメで、スパローが。
Okay, スパロー、私当てたってこと。
ごめん、間違えた。ごめんなさい。
Yeah. So it was like the sparrow's door closure. But まあ、つまり、その、君の名はと天気の子の監督、名前忘れてしまった。
新海
そうそうそう。新海誠の新しい映画。日本で見たかったけど、まあ、なぜ見なかったかというと、多分、遠かったからかな。わかんない。でも、アメリカに戻って、ついに、見れた。あゆみは、まだというか、見るつもりないでしょ。
見るつもりはない。でもなんかまだ映画館でやってんだよね。そんないい映画な
今まで。日本で結構流行ってる。まあ、流行ってた。
そう、なんかまだやってるよ。あれさ、4、5ヶ月前だよ。そんなやってるの
まあ、その登場人物と、その物語の、あらすじとか、全部のペーシングは、今までの映画の中で一番良かったと思う。ネタバレしたくないけど。
でもなんかさ、あれなんだよ。I should speak in English. I mean, like, me personally, I don't think watching anime in the theater doesn't worth it. Like, it's not worth it. Yeah, it's not worth it. So. Because,
どういうこと not worth it?
I mean, like, アニメ。
逆の意見を持ってる人から。
What?
私、逆に、 つまり、最後、なんか映画館で最後のに見た映画は何ですかちなみに。
Avatar。
アバターはアニメーションが入ってると思
違う。Like, I mean, like, how do you say? So, アニメ、日本の Japanese アニメさ。
う。
It's like, even if you watch it on the screen, like for PC とか like TV, it doesn't make any like difference. But for Avatar, like movies like Avatar, it is different. Like
なるほど。
water の like ね。
なるほど。
thing
全然同じ。アバターに関してはわかるけど、その映画自体が映画館のために作られてるんだけど、他の映画に関しては全然違うと思う。実は私はそのアニメ以外に映画館に行かない人、ほとんどの場合だと。
opposite ね。
そう。この、なんかミドルセクション長くなってるんだけど、その君の名は天気の子が気に入らなかった人でも、この新しい映画、すずめの戸締まりを楽しめると思う。ぜひ見てみてください。And we're back with the final section. And if you've made it to the final section, that means you send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com with a comment, question, language related, and or otherwise. This week, we have responses to not a question or comment from last week that I made, but something that I commented on YouTube, which is about transcripts. Last week's episode on YouTube, you can download this from YouTube if you want to listen to it off of YouTube, but I transcripted the first section and then like auto-translated the English and Japanese sections. But the transcript is accurate at the very least. And this to say, if you've been interested in listening to the podcast with a transcript or think that, hey, that's interesting, I would recommend that you check it out because depending on the responses, and we have some from this week about their opinions on the transcript and whether they think it's worth my time. If enough people think it's worth my time, I will continue doing it. If not, at the moment, it took me a while. I found another way to make it faster, so I'm going to try it again this week and see how it goes. But it did require a significant amount of time on top of all the other, like audio editing and video editing. And so at the moment, I mean, I don't think it's a big surprise. Obviously, we're always working to make things bigger, but at the moment, we have not generated a penny off of any of the stuff that we've done. So, like the time is still relevant. And so, yeah, here are some opinions on the transcript. And you could be someone who can write more opinions so that I can read them and make a decision here. We have 3 comments on them, which I will read back to back to back. The first one is from Oddity. Love the transcript. It's so helpful. Probably took a lot of work. It did. Thank you. Next person. A person with a waifu is the name.
A person with the waifu.
Yes. I personally use Apple Podcasts or Spotify to listen to this podcast, so did not see the transcript yet, but I personally think that is really not worth your effort, even though it's helpful. You can maybe spend time on other video ideas, as I suppose most of it listen to this podcast while going for a run, on the way to work, etc. Still, thanks for your efforts. And then finally, Shockox. Also, good on you for adding a transcript. I've done transcription and I know it's a pain. I know a transcript would definitely be helpful to me because my reading ability is way above my listening ability. And if you ever need help transcribing the English part, I used to transcribe for money during my college years. So it's something I can lend a specialized hand to. If not, then my specialized advice is to get a foot pedal for pausing and playing. You'd be surprised at how much time is saved stopping and playing the audio with your hands, even if you have a hotkey for it. Thank you for all your opinions on the transcript. What I will say, just real quick here, before we can get into, I guess, more substantive.
ねえねえ、ちょっと1個提案していいですか？
Yeah.
ショコックスをpart of lazy fluency にするのはどうでしょうか？
He's just I mean he is our MVP. He's our OG
でも
MVP.
MVP から昇格してもうなんかなんていうのもう社員にしちゃうみたいな。
Well, we currently have revenues of $0 and 0 cents. So, which is why I'm sorry that I appreciate your offer, but I could not in good faith not pay anybody anything to help out.
Yeah.
So, but I will say
姉ちゃん
with
ならあげるよ。
the a person with a waifu, where is it? That, oh yeah, I suppose most of us listen to this podcast. It's actually kind of like 50-50. About half people listen on YouTube and half listen off of YouTube.
確かにね。
So, and I feel like in terms of growth potential, the YouTube's probably larger just because I have no clue how you're supposed to grow a podcast other than just paying money on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. There's not like a recommendation system or anything. And YouTube, at the very least, they have a recommendation system, and there's SEO that you can work with. But for podcasts, as much as I can tell, aside from praying to the gods and SEO gods, and most big podcasts stem from their YouTube following to begin with, like almost all of them, or from traditional media. I don't really know any example of somebody just doing. Maybe, I mean, even Joe Rogan stemmed from he had a bunch of other background and resources that he was able to put in and get big guests to make his podcast successful. I don't know any example of a successful podcast that started the ground up as a podcast only. Obviously, there's some bigger ones, but when you're talking about like the biggest podcast in the world, that's not the case. What were you saying?
なんて言っとしたんだっけ。あ、ウェブサイトでさ、音声、ウェブサイトにも lazyfluency.com でもさ、あるじゃん、音声の
Yeah.
ストリーミングが。そこでさ、なんか PDF みたいになったら、なんかな。でもそっか、音声だけ聞いてる人はもうどっちにしろ見ないか、そっち。
Oh, what do you mean by PDF? What
だ
would
か
I
ら
put
そ
into
の
PDF?
lazyfluency.com になんか PDF を載っけるの、そのトランスクリプト。
Oh, you wouldn't need a PDF for that. A transcript has its own file type. But you can literally just download it from YouTube. You can download the transcript.
あ、そうなんだ。無料で？
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I wanted to put it on YouTube. Is it's for the video listeners, it works, and you can just go bloop and download the transcript. Oh, and the other thing is the other thing that Shockox recommended is the foot pedal. Currently, the English parts are something. So YouTube is automatic translating for like English only, and it's like it works good enough. I can go through and correct stuff like that, but the problem is Japanese isn't registered at all, and other services, and I've gone through 5, 6, or tried at this moment, and they're either unreasonably expensive and do a bad job, or just do or like I have to mess around with my other coding experience and expertise to get some weird version to work. And so I found some way that I think is semi-doable that will work with a mix between like manually doing it and not doing it. And this week I'll be trying that and seeing how much time it takes from beginning to end. But fundamentally the problem is when you have two languages, some sentences themselves have both English and Japanese in them. It's just a problem that doesn't really have a good solution. And even as a CS guy, you'd think, wow, this is trivial. It's actually not trivial. Just because the vast majority of use cases aren't this use case, and therefore there is not any market really for this use case, which means Joey's sad. But yeah, thank you so much for the comments. We appreciate the feedback. And if you're like, wow, I really appreciate the transcript, let us know. Send an email, lazyfluency@gmail.com, or leave a comment on YouTube so that it doesn't go away for something that you appreciated. Anyways, next comment, which actually is from the same one from each of the same people, but this time, actually, sorry, one from a person with a waifu and one from Oddity on books relating to last week specifically about bans. So a person with a waifu. Yeah. I read an article way back about the reason why Death Note was banned in China. It had something to do with the students making real-life replicas of the book and writing the names of the teachers they hated. This got the government involved, and the ban soon followed. That is hilarious. It's like, even this is, you know what as an American, you know what I would much prefer to our current situation? Instead of children getting killed in school shootings, I would much appreciate that instead of doing that, a kid just writes their teacher's name in a book. And that they're, you know what I'm saying? And in America, people aren't writing, like, I would love for them to writing their names in the Death Note. Do you know the plot of Death Note, by the way, Ayami?
I know,
I
そう
say
だ
your
か
word.
ら、あれ、名前書いたら心筋梗塞だっけで死ぬんでし
Yeah,
ょ
oh, okay. You know way more specifically than I thought you'd know. Yes. Yeah, you get a heart attack.
だって見たもん、実写版を。
Oh, the G-Shep. Oh, God. Of all the
あ、
things.
待って、あ、
Did
違
you
う。
watch,
どっ
did
ち
you
も見
watch
た
the
気がす
Netflix
る。
one or is it like a Japanese one?
でも普通、なんかね、いいよ。
No,
いいよ。
so it's just, I don't think you will agree on this. I've yet to see in my entire life a good live action adaptation of
マ
anime.
ジで騙されたと思って見てみ。うん。
I think if you haven't seen the original anime, it's going to be hard.
I have. アニメも見
You
た
have?
し、実写版も
You
見
saw
たし。
25 episodes of the anime? Am I supposed to believe that? That's hard for me to believe from somebody who won't even watch an episode of anime. You sat through 25 excruciating episodes of anime?
ちゃんと見たよ。確か昔だから覚えてないけど。確か。
Okay, boy, then I doubt. Okay, well, I express my doubts, but I do think this ban is hilarious, mainly because I feel like writing your teachers' names in a book is a much better outlet. Oh, even if it's to kill them, whatever. Like, I'd much rather have people writing books than getting guns and shooting up schools. Also, it feels like a weird thing to put on this book for people's edgy ways of using it. It's, I know China does have some weird things about, was it skeletons or something? Like, it was a magic thing or something where, or is this magic or something where, oh no, Yu-Gi-Oh, where skeletons or something are no-go in China, and so they have to censor them. What was it? The gaikotsu? Like,
骸骨ダメなの？
人間の. Yeah. I don't
あ、そうな
know
の？
why.
謎。なんで？
But yeah, thanks for the info there. And the last comment from Oddity. Maybe it's a bit melodramatic, but my take on banning books is a famous quote by Heinrich Heine. Where they have burned books, they will end in burning human beings. Books are knowledge, even highly objectionable ones. Even if they contain blatant lies, books are a reflection of the human condition. Not all aspects of the human condition are fuzzy, warm, and cuddly. Purposely ignoring and suppressing the expression or access to these darker aspects will not make them disappear. It'll only make them fester in the dark. The best way to deal with lies, disinformation, and taboos is to bring them out into the light and make them known. So, censorship of any kind is pure bullshit, IMO. I couldn't stand the difference between a light novel and a nanobe. That was another thing that she added at the very end. Thank you for the comment, Oddity. And yeah, I mean, I fundamentally agree. One of the funny things is if, for those interested, I would recommend taking a look at last episodes and looking at the Wikipedia page of books that are banned nationally. And something you'll notice is that countries that ban books, and not saying that the US has a great history of human rights abuses, whatever, but there's a very high correlation between countries banning books and having very, very questionable human rights abuses. The only weird exception to this, I would say, is Singapore, which banned probably the most books, but they're like a benevolent dictatorship. But the thing about dictatorships is that they can go any way on a flip of a dime. So, yeah, obviously oh yeah. Do you want to explain? Do you want to try to do best to explain the difference between a light novel and nanobe? I can do my best after.
ナノベってただショートにしただけでしょ？ライトノブ。
No. But there's a different meaning. There's a different, because in Japanese it's shosetsu versus nanobe.
ああ、はいはいはい。あ、だからなんかラノベはまあ若者向けのちょっと短い感じの小説で、なんか主人公の目線で書いてんだっけ？で、挿絵が大体入ってるんだよ。1ページ丸々とか2ページとか。なんか普通の小説だと文庫本だとね、大体絵はないんだよ。だけど、そこで、わしの学校で、先生がまあ、結構特徴的だから見た目が、丸々1ページさ、絵描いてあったら、あ、ラノベだってわかるから、なんかそれが特徴かな。
So that's Imi's explanation. I would say, generally speaking, the way people think about it is, one is aimed towards a slightly younger audience, which slightly easier vocab and is slightly shorter. But I'd say the more realistic thing is it is a light novel if it's been published by a publisher that is understood to be a light novel, and it is a novel if it is not. Why am I saying this? Well, let me just pull out some examples right here. The one that I always talk about, and let's go with
Okami.
here. I'll grab 4, and we'll straight up we'll just compare these right here. I'll bring them all here, and this will be is this a novel or a light novel? So first up we have Legend of the Galactic Heroes. Looks super anime-y. It also has pictures in it, Ayami, if you're wondering. Let me see if I can find. Yes, it has pictures in it. There are pictures in this book, and oops, I found one right here. There's a picture in this book. It is a novel. It's a novel. It's also shorter than most.
違うんだよ。それは違うんだよ。違う。
Okay, let me just keep going. Excuse me. Let me just keep going here. We have Ningen Shikaku, which is a famous novel, and it is tiny. It's like 170, 180 pages, 170, 180 pages. We have, next up, we have Mata Onaji Yume o Miteita by Sumi no Yoru, which is a novel, which is also, it's like 270, 280 pages, but this has an easier vocab than either the 2 previous ones, and honestly, it has easier vocab than the one after this. Whoops, or so not Haruhi, but I've Spice and Wolf back there, which is 300 plus pages and has very difficult vocab. Then you have Suzume Haruhi, which I think these are, if you see any like bright colored back of a book, that will probably be a light novel. This is probably one of the more clear ones as a light novel, but even Suzume Haruhi, some of the volumes are like 400 pages. And then I have, what's this? This is Toshokan Senso, which is like Library Wars. And this is also a novel, despite looking like it's targeted towards kids. And you would think it is like a light novel. And there might even be pages or pictures in here. I haven't read enough through it. And it looks, even look at this. Look at the image on the front. Wouldn't you say, oh, that looks a light novel? It's a novel. So
それは表紙だからカウントされないんだよ。中身じゃないとダメ。
I just showed you the Nakami of Gingaeyu Densetsu a second ago, right?
違う、あれは違うの。下に文章があったからダメなの。全部、1ページ丸々が、絵じゃないと、ラノベじゃない。
I mean, there aren't pages here. I'll show you. I mean, this is getting a little long here, but, and just for audio listeners, you're just gonna have to guess what I'm saying. Most of the pages in a light novel aren't, they're not pictures.
え? 知らない。
Someone needs to read a light novel. Someone needs this is propaganda. This light novel propaganda, whole definition change is just propaganda for people not being able to respect light novels, which doesn't really mean anything. But yeah, I told you the general intention, and then there's kind of the reality. What a light novel is really a subjective thing. So yeah, thanks for the comments, everyone. That bell means we reached the end of today's episode. Thanks for joining us in another lazy conversation towards fluency. If you have any language-related questions and are just looking for general advice, send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com, and we might respond in the next episode. Also, make sure to check out our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. We'd appreciate the support. This has been Joey.
And Yami.
Signing off. じゃあねー。
じゃあねー。